Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, and as such, I would like to talk about some interesting poetry that I found. Today's poem is all about empathy and dead birds. I am referring to On Empathy by Bettina Judd. For those who don't know, Bettina Judd is a Black American writer who's been getting most of her work published within the past 10 to 15 years. She's written a number of volumes of poetry, and I think gotten a little bit of attention or awards for her work. But she mostly serves as a professor of sexuality and gender studies in the University of Washington, I believe it is, which is interesting. But I don't know too much else about this poet. It does seem that they write in unconventional types of styles based on what of their work I have found. And I'm very eager to talk about their unusual style as well as the content of their poetry. So without further ado, let's talk about On Empathy. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. On Empathy. What it sounds like is a bird breaking small bones against glass. The least of them, a sparrow, of course. You're about to serve dinner, and this is the scene. Blame the bird, the impertinent windows. Try not to think of the inconvenience of blood splattering violet in the dusk. How can you eat after this? Do not think of whom to blame when the least of us hurtles into the next moment. A pane opening into another, the least of us spoiling your meal. The smell of it will be smoke and rank. You will mutter about this for days, the injustice of splatter on your window. Foolish bird, civilization, house with the view, fucking bird feeder. It will take you a week while the flesh starts to rot under thinning feathers, while the blood has congealed and stuck, for you to realize that no one is coming to take the body. It is your dead bird. It is your glass. You have options, you think. Hire out, move out, leave it for the bigger, blacker birds. You will taste rotting just above the top of your tongue, so much that you check yourself to make sure that it is not you. The bird deserves something. You go to the closet, pick out a shoebox, discount, designer. You start to think of how it has come to this, pondering your mortality through a bird, a dead bird. Never mind. You don't find it a problem not running into windows. It is an eyesore, and we start to gather as large billows in your yard. You marvel at us, beautiful, collecting and loosening our dark bodies from white sky to your grass. And then it comes, more bones and blood, one by one crashing into the closed pane, mindless birds, brown and gray feathers, filthy pest, another fucking feeder. We look like billions lifting into light and then shatter. You might find a delicate humility in the art of cleaning glass. While you work, you sustain tiny slivers of opened flesh. Tips of your fingers sing, shards, carnage. It has become too much. You are careful to pick up all that you can see. You call a repairman. You are careful to pick up all that you can see. You throw everything into big, shiny trash bags. You are careful to pick up all that you can see. You consider French doors. You are careful to pick up all that you can see and find more with each barefoot trip through your bloodbath house. And so that was On Empathy. In terms of analysis, there's a little bit worth talking about in this poem. I find it very amusing because the narrative is just a person witnessing a bird hitting their house, hoping that someone takes care of it, but no one is coming to take care of it. And soon, they go outside and they see more birds hitting the glass window on their house. Just bird after bird after bird. The narrator says that it is carnage. They look like billions lifting into flight and then shatter. So pretty devastating. And then they're cleaning up, but they're wondering how it came to all of this. They consider renovating their house, but their house is now a bloodbath house, a house that's seen better days because the birds at one point birds were no longer birds were not crashing into it, but now that's all they seem to do, and it might have something to do with the window panes of their house. So a pretty sort of devastating kind of poem, but the poem is called On Empathy, so you would wonder, what are we being empathetic towards? What are we showing empathy towards? And I think the narrator in this poem wants to feel empathy. They say, how can you eat after this? Do not think of whom to blame when the least of us hurtles into the next moment. So thinking about the dead bird and how it's you try to ignore it, but you can't ignore it for long. You're pondering your own mortality, even though you say you don't have a problem not running into windows. It's kind of a dumb thing that dumb animals do. Maybe not you, but you still can't, it does seem like the subject of this poem, this person, does feel for it. They're trying to ignore it, but they can't ignore it for very long. And they consider changing up their house a little bit, getting French doors, because they don't want the birds to keep running into their house. It might be an inconvenience to them, but they're also clearly thinking of the birds in this poem. And then there's a lot of use of repetition here as well. They especially they say fucking feeder over and over and over, just highlighting something as innocuous as a feeder being responsible for all of this. Maybe it's just like correlation equals causation to the subject of this poem. But in the last verse, there's a phrase that is specifically repeated, and it is, "You are careful to pick up all that you can see." And it's used in this context, like you say that and you consider French doors. You are careful to pick up all that you can see. And so that's repeated frequently. And so what would that mean? It's obvious that Bettina wants to call attention to that specific line. And what I think is happening is, obviously it's meant in a literal sense, where the narrator picks up all that they can see, cleans things up, so that they don't have dead birds in their yard anymore. But it could also mean in a figurative sense, you pick up, you're cognizant of all that you can see. You're showing empathy to all that you can see. You're much more aware of your surroundings because the tiniest birds, the tiniest things have left such a great impact on your life here, made it a bit of an inconvenience, but it's still an impact on your life. So I like how Bettina's using repetition here to call attention to that specific phrase, and a couple different ways that it can be used here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Empathy by Bettina Judd. Certainly a lot more that can be said about the poem, specifically how it seems like the narrator of the poem is a bird. They keep saying the least of us, and I don't think they mean the least of the animals on the earth. They mean the least of the birds themselves. So it's a bird. It's just interesting. You could say a lot about that in this poem, but I'll leave that up to you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Would love to hear from you. Let's have a discussion about this. I'll put a link to it in the description as well, so you can read it if you prefer. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem or this poet if they do not already know. I think it'd be fun to read more of Bettina Judd and going forward. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and dead bird travels. Farewell.